He says it's simply become a patsy for wishful thinking. He went on to question, he said, is Archaeopteryx the ancestor of all birds? Perhaps yes, perhaps no. There is no way of answering the question. It's easy enough to make up stories of how one form gave rise to another, to find reasons why the stages should be favored by natural selection, but such stories are not a part of science, for there is no way of putting them to the test.
You know, you have to give him credit. He understands what science is, and he says these are stories, they're not science.
Exactly.
And yet again, this is being presented as one of the 3 or 4 most irrefutable evidences for the fact of evolution.
Alan Fiducia, probably one of the world's foremost bird specialists, favors with what Colin Patterson said. Alan Fiducia concluded that Archaeopteryx was a boreal volant, considerably advanced aerodynamically, probably capable of flapping powered flight to at least some degree. Listen to his conclusion. Archaeopteryx was, in the modern sense, a bird.
Just a bird with teeth.
A bird. And, you know, sadly, we've known that since 1993. 2004, we're marching this out as evidence that Darwin was right.
And obviously, if we had other better evidence, we wouldn't be marching this out.
Ironically, National Geographic tried a similar thing 5 years earlier, 1999. In fact, I would encourage viewers to go to the library, check out the November 1999 issue of National Geographic, where there's an article titled Feathers for T-Rex. Now you'll notice, Don, look at what they're saying right here. New bird-like fossils are missing links in dinosaur evolution. Any question there?
No, it's a fact.
That's what they're telling us. In this particular article, they go on to announce a new creature called Archaeoraptor. The only problem is Archaeoraptor was a complete fraud. Archaeoraptor actually evolved in a Chinese farmhouse where some Chinese farmers took the front half of a dinosaur, the back half of a bird, they pasted them together and sold it to some very unsuspecting American scientists.
Well, you got to admire their ingenuity, but you can't admire their truth.
That's right, that's right. Doesn't end there. The fourth piece of evidence National Geographic offers us is natural selection. Survival of the fittest, so to speak. And I want to make sure that the viewers out there understand we know natural selection does occur. We know that there are small microevolutionary changes that can occur to help weed out the unfit. In fact, it was a creationist, a fellow by the name of Edward Blythe, who actually came up with that theory. But we need to understand natural selection does not provide a mechanism for macroevolution. That is, this idea that we all came from one particular creature. You know, right now I have 2 golden retrievers at my house who are supposed to be able to retrieve balls. One of them actually likes to watch me retrieve. But think with me for just a moment, Don. If we breed 2 dogs, what do we still get?
A dog.
We get a dog. And we may get a short hair to long hair, but we still get a dog.
Long legs, short legs, but dogs make dogs.
Right. The thing that we need to understand, yes, we can make small changes. Microevolution does occur.
Absolutely.
We know that within limited parameters. The problem is they teach this truth to our children and grandchildren and then try to slip in macroevolution. Oh, this idea that everything originated from a common ancestor.
And just so our viewers are tracking with you, microevolution is adaptability and change within the species.
Yes.
We have lots of evidence of that.
Yes.
Nowhere in the world and nowhere in any one study have we ever seen one species evolve to another species, which is what we would call macroevolution.
Exactly. We don't see dogs, for instance, giving rise to a rhinoceros or a fern or a giraffe. No. Dogs give rise to dogs. Corn, if you were to take a seed of corn, put it in the closet, wait 100 years, plant that seed of corn, you're going to get corn.
And no matter how hard a cat wishes, it can never become a dog.
Swedish biologist Soren Luthrop said micromutations do occur, but the theory that these alone can account for evolutionary change is either falsified or else it is an unfalsifiable, hence metaphysical theory. He went on to say, I suppose that nobody will deny that it's a great misfortune if an entire branch of science becomes addicted to a false theory. But this is what has happened in biology. I believe that one day the Darwinian myth will be ranked the greatest deceit in the history of science. When this happens, many people will pose the question, how did this ever happen?
I believe that man's a prophet.
I agree. Hugo de Vries in talking about this idea of natural selection, he summed it up best. He said, natural selection may explain the survival of the fittest, but it cannot explain the arrival of the fittest.
That's profound.
Don, he made that comment all the way back in 1905. And yet, November 2004...
100 years later, we're still trying to run the same old tired theory up the flagpole. Yep.
The fifth piece of evidence they offer is vestigial structures. Now, some of the viewers may not be familiar with that particular word. Vestigial structures, according to evolutionists, would be things that we don't need, that are evolutionary baggage, like, for instance, the appendix or the tonsils or your little toe. Even though I think most viewers out there, if they were to cut off their little toe, they would probably not consider it vestigial. Textbooks used to say we had over 180 vestigial organs in the human body. That list has pretty much all but disappeared thanks to our growing knowledge today. I want you to notice this progression. 1989, they were still touting vestigial structures as evidence for evolution. So 89, they're saying, look, you've got all these parts in you you don't need. 1994, they're showing pictures of a human appendix, a horse appendix. They're saying, hey, look, these are evolutionary ancestors. They go together. Well, lo and behold, 1998, we realized that appendix, it has a function.
Is that about the last organ in the human body that was considered to be that?
Probably. There's a part in the nose, one of the vomers in the nose, that was also considered to be vestigial. Notice what they say about the appendix. Long regarded as a vestigial organ with no function in the human body, the appendix is now thought to be one of the sites where immune responses are initiated. In fact, we know its removal also increases a person's susceptibility to leukemia, Hodgkin's disease, cancer of the colon, and cancer of the ovaries.
Wow, that makes it pretty special and pretty important, doesn't it?
How many evolutionists would allow us to go ahead and cut out all of their alleged vestigial organs in a sterile environment if they don't really need them?
It sounds like what vestigial really meant was we haven't figured out what its purpose is yet.
That's precisely what R.L. Weissong said. He said, not too long ago, man was imputed to have 180 vestiges. Organs like the appendix, the tonsils, the thymus, pineal gland, the thyroid gland, they were all on the list. Today, all former vestigial organs are known to have some function during the life of the individual. If the organ has any function at any time, it cannot be called rudimentary or vestigial. As man's knowledge has increased, the list of vestigial organs decreased. So what was really vestigial? Was it not man's rudimentary knowledge of the intricacies of the body?
Well, I think we're going to have to scratch that one off the list of proofs for evolution. We got to take a break, Brad, and we'll be back in a minute to talk about viruses and bacteria. It's the last one of the arguments left, and then to wrap this up. We have to go to break right now, folks. Don't go away, because I think you need to hear about this last evidence that's offered in National Geographic, and then you need to hear the truth. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Creation versus evolution. You weigh the evidence. The bird feather. It couldn't just happen. For their weight, feathers are stronger than any man-made structures. The design and functions of a feather are even more astounding. Evolutionists claim that reptile scales evolved into feathers. Feathers have a much more complex DNA structure than reptile scales. There is virtually no similarity between the two, nor is there any fossil evidence showing the transition from scale to feather. So how can evolutionists claim this really happened?
All right, we're back from the break, and it's good to have you with us. We're here with Dr. Brad Harrop, and he's talking to us about the November of 2004 issue of National Geographic, which asked the question, was Darwin wrong? And it has in great big letters, no, and it gives 6 evidences to back up today the theory of evolution. We've refuted 5 of those, Doctor, magnificently. There's 1 left. The first 5 seem to have crumbled to dust. The last one has to do with bacteria and viruses. Will you talk to us about that?
I suspect most of the viewers out there have heard the phrase resistant strains of bacteria. Oftentimes we hear that, especially in a hospital setting. National Geographic says there is no better or more immediate evidence supporting the Darwinian theory than this process of forced transformation among our immunicable germs. This is the best they've got, according to their own wording. This is it. And yet, when you think about it for just a moment, the first thing